with a business degree. He and his brother started a family-owned publishing company printing hometown phone books. He's the founder and the CEO of For the Good of Illinois and was a Republican candidate for governor last year. He and his wife Carrie have 3 daughters and they live in Hinsdale. Would you welcome Adam Andrzejewski?
We've had some great speakers so far today. Let's give a big round of applause for the new young faces, John Gordon and Dwayne Wilhauer. Those were great talks today. I said we can only have real reform in Illinois if we have new faces. And those two guys, they're strong, they're men of principle and courage. Let's give another round of applause for both of those guys. I want to thank you. Look. It's the first days of fall. It's beautiful. It's the weekend, and it's homecoming in Robinson. Thank you for coming here today to the Tea Party. Give yourselves a round of applause. A big round of applause for people that have worked tirelessly to put this together. It's oftentimes a thankless job, and events all over the state where we gather in this movement, they need to be recognized. A big round of applause for Tyler Bush and his team. Brian Mulvihill's here for the Tea Party in Effingham, and Sandy Holtz and Sally Henson, the Freedom and Liberty people from all the leadership from all around central and southern Illinois. Let's give them a big round of applause. And again, this movement is so mainstream, but we've been vilified. And probably my favorite sign at a Tea Party rally was a sign that said, "We're extreme, we're radical, we're terrorists. Hey, wait a second. That's my mother." And it's so true. I mean, haven't you seen what happened in Wisconsin? I mean, that was extreme and that was radical. The hard left. We got a view of who they were. But you know what? We've got something to learn from the hard left. They fight. They fight for their constituencies. They knew they were going to lose that vote. And so what do? Their state legislators, they left the state. They busted in tens of thousands of protesters, and thousands stayed overnight in the Capitol and caused millions of dollars worth of damage. When they lost the vote, they contested it in court. They found a friendly judge, and he issued a temporary stay on the law. And then they recalled the Republican state senators that voted for the law on collective bargaining, and they're going to recall the governor. They contested the Supreme Court race, and they almost knocked out a sitting Wisconsin Supreme Court justice only by 7,000 votes. They fight. But they are extreme, and they must have an answer. And in Illinois, you and I, we need to fight for better policy and a better government. I've said that the Freedom and Liberty movement, the Tea Party movement, the 9/12 movement, you and I can be the most substantial movement in the 150 years of this country, because it's a constitutional movement, and our government has gotten away from constitutional principles. It's up to you and me to bring our government back to the Constitution. I founded For the Good of Illinois back in 2007, and it is our mission to educate and empower citizens to be able to demand a transparent, accountable, and limited government. And I am proud to say that last week on Tuesday, we took a giant leap forward in the fulfillment of our transparency mission. We posted online virtually every single public employee's pay and pension from virtually every level of Illinois government. And we put that up on our website at openthebooks.com. So you and I can review and hold our government accountable. So you and I can, for the first time, we have access to insider information. this is what we found, that most decisions on pay and pensions are local decisions. And so we need to hold the elected officials that are making these decisions accountable for those decisions. I believe that government doesn't have an obligation to make you wealthy. It only has an obligation to pay you fairly. You believe that, and for the first time, we can hold our elected officials to that. This is why it's important. 70 to 80% of a local operating budget for a unit of government is payroll and pensions. This is also why it's important. You and I, when we question those pay and pensions, should not have to identify ourselves. We should not have to go through an intimidating process of filing a request, waiting for a government bureaucrat to fulfill that request, taking time and resource and energy from our government, which we fund, to fulfill that request. Public business in Illinois should be done publicly. It should be done proactively. And we have set that standard at For the Good of Illinois at OpenTheBooks.com, that pay and pensions of public employees are posted proactively, and I am proud of that. Here's what we have found. I simply wanted to know, in 2010, last year, how many public employees or how many people took a paycheck or a pension check from government at all levels. I wanted an answer to the simple question of how much does our government cost? 970,000 people took a pay or a pension check last year from Illinois government, and we're only a state of 13 million people. The public payrolls in this state, they're legendary. Here's the next thing that we found. I wanted to know, are our pension systems sustainable? So just in the teacher's retirement pension, among the people that retired last year, how much did they pay into the system and how much did they pull out in year one? And collectively, a little over 4,800 people retired last year. They paid in a little over $400 million, and they got out a little more than $200 million in their first year. And what this shows you is anecdotal evidence that the entire system is unsustainable. Here's the next thing that we found. That the high earners on the public employee payrolls, they're crowding out social services for the most vulnerable in this state. 3,062 public employees at all levels of Illinois government out-earn the governor, and collectively they earn $1 billion a year. Oftentimes in Illinois, it's not a question of illegal or legal. All of it's legal. You and I, a year ago, we remember the national news stories in Bell, California, where the city manager of Bell, California made $800,000 a year. But a month later, he was hauled out in handcuffs for public embezzlement. It is legal in the city of Chicago to work for 1 day as a city employee and turn around and take a $158,000 a year pension for the rest of your life. And that was just outed by the Chicago Tribune watchdog reporters. That story actually happened in 2004. Dennis Gannon, that union leader, that union steward who worked for 1 day in the city that got that sweetheart insider pension deal, has already cleaned out more than $1.1 million of pension funds since 2004. And this is why I say transparency is the foundation for better government. This is what we found at OpenTheBooks.com. That sweetheart union access deal for the city of Chicago, it also exists in Springfield. the second highest teacher pension in teacher retirement history went to an elementary school teacher from Harvey who took a 12-year leave of absence, and he went to Washington, D.C., and he was president of the National Education Association, the NEA, the Teachers Union, and then he retired on an Illinois state government pension of $20,200 a month. And I'm going to work with State Senator Matt Murphy to craft a simple law in Illinois. The government pensions are for government workers. And I think every single union employee, the rank and file, every single editorial board, the Freedom and Liberty Movement, every single person, that makes sense to you and I. But it's not the law right now. Amongst the top 6 municipal pensions in state history, what we learned at openthebooks.com, and we took a look at that and ran that query, you can run this at home. 3 of the top 6 pensions in the municipal retirement system are from non-governmental entities that also run lobbying operations in Springfield, and they're such good lobbyists, they've written themselves in as insiders on sweetheart deals into our government pensions. It's the Illinois Municipal League. It's the Park District Risk Management Association, PDERMA, and it's the Illinois Park District Association. And every single one of those nonprofit, non-governmental entities, when their high earner retired in the municipal state retirement system, the government system, they participated in salary spiking in the final years to maximize their taxpayer pension. Government pensions, government retirement systems should only exist for government workers. Will you join me on that legislation? There are 3 strikes making the current pension systems. The pension system for my father, who taught for 38 years in the public school system in Herscher and retired 5 years ago. There are 3 strikes making our state pension retirement systems unsustainable going forward. At openthebooks.com, you can graph every single public employee, most of them on 10 years worth of salary history, and the graphs always go straight up. 50% of you and I over the last 5 years have taken flat pay, lost our jobs, or taken less pay. And it's not happening in the public sector. So the trajectory of pay in the public sector is the first strike on our pension systems. Here's the second strike. Illinois has 17 major pension systems and nearly 700 local police and fire systems. The entire system is designed for the double and triple dipper in our pension systems. To put that in perspective, Wisconsin has 3 major pension systems. As employees go from level of government to pension system, and the trajectory of their pay keeps escalating while our pay isn't, that's the second strike. So at openthebooks.com, it was a long project. It took thousands of hours worth of work. It took tens of thousands of dollars. It's about a $100,000 project. We literally had to file over 10,000 Freedom of Information Act requests to compile the information. And for the first time in state history, and we believe in any state's history, you can get a quick and simple answer to your question of how much does government cost. It is quite simply the fulfillment of a promise. On when I ran for governor of Illinois, I promised to open up the books. And on Tuesday, I'm proud to say, the books in Illinois, the books are open. We have a lot of battles to fight in this state. It's going to take every single one of us to fight those battles. For the past 4 years, I've traveled the entire state, and I asked one question. Do you think Illinois is running well? And not one single person in 4 years has ever raised their hand, even in liberal college audiences, nobody has raised their hand. We all get it. It's not running well. But that's not the question that needs an answer. The question that needs an answer is if you believe Illinois can be reformed, and it's a serious question, and you need to think long and hard about that answer. I believe it can be reformed because the people of Illinois, we are people of principle, and we live by a completely separate code than what our political class lives by. Think about what you do in your families, and in your business, in your community, in your church, every single day. And every single day, when we live freedom and liberty, we accomplish impossible things. I know back in 1997, my brother and I, we started a business. And it was impossible. And if I'd have to recreate that business right now with a family, with bills, with a mortgage, with a car payment, I couldn't do it. Because for 10 years, I literally worked around the clock when we established this company. And at the end of the first year, we were upside down hundreds of thousands of dollars. And at the end of the third year, it was a milestone. We sold $1 million worth of our advertising, and we almost lost the business that year because we ran out of money on a cash flow basis. And it took us 6 years before we finally out-earned our employees. And in the 5th year, my brother was still calling me for capital calls, putting our money, which we make, back into the business. This is a typical story. Many of you have lived this story. And in the 6th year to the 10th year, we went from $5 million in sales to $20 million in sales, and we were an overnight success. I went from the nice rural town of Herscher, Illinois, to one of the most affluent communities in the state in Hinsdale in 15 years. It's a rare story, and it will be unique in Illinois if you and I don't fight for freedom and liberty. We must fight for first principles. We must fight at every level to shrink Illinois government, starting from the local to the township to the county to the state. And here's the frame. Washington, D.C., we're upset about Washington, D.C., and it is corrupt. But Springfield is more corrupt. And our counties are more corrupt than our capital, and the local units are most corrupt. When we've shown the light on the local units of government all across the state, citizens have brought the heat. In Joliet, Illinois, we showcased, through filing Freedom of Information Act requests, that the village manager in Joliet was making $463,000 a year on his contract. In Palatine, it was $338,000 a year. And in Park Ridge, the village manager, the taxpayers, when he took the job, had helped him with a $350,000 no-interest forgivable loan to buy his home. And it was happening all over Illinois, in the tiny town of Heron, not far from here. The superintendent of schools makes $178,000, and he out-earns 49 out of the 50 governors. You and I have an obligation and a responsibility at all levels to hold those people making pay and pension decisions accountable. Who here in the room thinks that their property taxes are too low? Nobody's ever raised their hand on that question either. I also want to deliver the news that of my contacts amongst Chicago Democrats, what they're telling me that if we lose in the General Assembly the elections in 2012, if we don't retire Michael Madigan as Speaker, Chicago Democrats in the General Assembly, Michael Madigan and John Cullerton and their Chicago Democratic cronies in their caucus, they're coming back for an additional 2-point hike, taking it from 5% to 7% on the individual income tax rate in this state. They're going to raise it after the 67% hike. They're going to raise it an additional 40%. The last tax hike purely went to fund public employment pensions and pay. And we still have $8 billion worth of unpaid bills to our service providers, the people serving the most vulnerable in this state. pay and pensions are crowding out social services in Illinois. There used to be a moment in this state for reasonable pay and pensions. We could fulfill the obligations of this state. And we must get back to that point again. Please join me. Please remember the words at the founding of the country, when the founders of this country said, "Don't tread on me." Let's rekindle that spirit. Let's find our flag. Let's remember our American dream, and let's fight for the fundamental underpinnings of what has made this country the greatest nation in the history of the world. God bless you. We have a lot of battles to fight. I look forward to fighting them in the same trench with you. And God bless the good old United States of America. Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Well, that just about does it. Thank you all for coming. And we can't just sit down. We can't hope that things get better. We've got to do something about it. Most of the people here have got gray hair or not much hair. We need to get the young people involved as well. Now, I have gray hair. I'm not old enough to remember this, but Thomas Paine said, "These are the times that try men's souls. The summer soldier and the sunshine patriot will, in this crisis, shrink from the service of their country." Well, you guys are here, so you haven't shrunk yet. But he that stands now deserves the love of man and woman. Tyranny, like hell, is not easily conquered. We're going to close with a song. Hunter?
God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with the light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the oceans white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, land that I love. Stand beside her and guide her through the night with a light from above. From the mountains to the prairies, to the ocean white with foam. God bless America, my home, sweet home. God bless America, our home, sweet home.
Thank you all for coming.